The Understanding by Design UbD template with example unit plan for college level creative writing by Kathleen Coleman. The Understanding by Design template is a means of creating a course or unit plan for a course of any level, K through 12 or higher education, and it's based on the principle of backward design, which has the instructor create the lesson plan first from the basis of the desired end result, and then designing the course or unit backward based on the goals the instructor hopes to achieve. There are 3 stages. The first stage is to identify the desired results. For stage 1, you identify desired results. In this first element, we're looking at the course introduction. We would need to determine the subject and discipline, the class name and number, the time frame for the entirety of the course. It helps to also focus on deciding where your audience is for this course, the type of school or organization, your textbook choices, and then any online resource material that would be helpful for your students to work with or for you to reference as the instructor. The course design, or the why you're developing the course, could include that it's a course that you plan to teach or that you've taught before. For this example, this unit is being designed to serve as part of a pre-existing course, but is also then excisable from that course to be delivered in other venues, such as in a workshop. Next, you would go to the unit summary or unit overview, which gives an overview of the unit in your own words, basically the goals of the particular unit you're covering. If you're designing an entire class, you would do an overview of the entire class. The content standards and or competencies section may feel very familiar to teachers of K through 12 education. In higher education, you may have that, you may not. For the purposes of this example, the instructor went to the National Council of Teachers of English, or NCTE, and created competency codes based on the goals of the type of course that this undergraduate creative writing course would be covering. Transfer is one of the elements that UbD emphasizes. Transfer asks, what does the student need to be able to do in the future, perhaps in their career, in an environment that is different than the classroom without the support of the instructor. So here we've created transfer codes in the left-hand column, matching them to the competency discipline-specific codes in the far right column. Then in the transfer area in the middle column, what kinds of long-term independent accomplishments are desired? You would want to have it as an umbrella statement prior to each element listed there. Students will be able to independently use their learning to. In the next section, we look to meaning making. So here we're looking at what's called the essential questions. What thought-provoking questions will foster inquiry, meaning making, and transfer? And these should be put in the form of a question. We then would make question codes and then link those again to the discipline-specific competency codes. These types of essential questions may not have real clear-cut answers, and they would be considered subject to debate. So as an example, the first essential question listed for this specific unit is it necessary for a creative writer to submit his or her work to professional publication markets in order to be a quote-unquote real writer? Why or why not? So as students would do this unit based on the concept of submitting their work for professional publication, they would start to struggle with this question, whether or not doing this step is even necessary, what about that step would make them feel like a real writer, why publication is a necessary step, or is it a necessary step in the writing process? And that links to 2 different competency areas that are discipline-specific to the field of creative writing instruction. After considering the essential questions for the discipline for the unit, for the class, you need to establish understandings. What specifically do you want students to understand? What inferences should they make? And put them in the form of a statement. Students will understand that, etc. These again would take their own uniquely designed codes. Then those competencies need to link to the discipline-specific competency codes in the right-hand column. Next, we look at acquisition. Acquisition is looking at 2 dimensions: knowledge, which would be facts and basic concepts, things that students should know and be able to recall. Skills are discrete skills and processes that students should be able to use. As with the earlier sections, they would take competency codes to the left that are defined in this specific unit plan that are linked to discipline-specific competency codes. And these are based a little bit more on lower level learning objectives, things like spitting back a definition of a term or being able to perform a specific skill when called upon to do so. In stage 2, we determine acceptable evidence. Now that we've established what we're evaluating students on, the big picture, the competency, learning objectives, knowledge, skills, essential questions, and understandings, the instructor needs to decide how are students going to be assessed on their understanding and mastery of those big picture concepts. So here, the instructor designs performance tasks. These are assessments where students flexibly and intelligently use what they know in a new complex situation where higher order thinking in the use of content is required. You would list the desired results codes would be the transfer goals and meaning goals. The performance task is essentially describing the actual assignment. And then the evaluative criteria is what criteria will be used in each assessment to evaluate attainment of the desired results. Regardless of the format of the assessment, what qualities are most important. So here we have an assignment which would be a proposal presentation, which includes research on publication markets that is then presented to the class. The students give one another feedback about that. This unit goes on to describe a total of 4 assignments that would be all students would be assessed on in the mastery of the big picture criteria described in stage 1. In other evidence, here you would place assessments of knowledge, skills, standards, and other goals that are not otherwise assessed by the performance tasks. The last element in this stage 2 would be an example of a grading rubric. So you would want to create a grading rubric for each of your assessments, but for the purposes of this example, we're just showing one grading rubric. And this would be for the complete submission package, which would be the most extensive assignment in this unit. The criterion would enumerate, in this case, 4 different dimensions with descriptions of what would make that criterion show exemplary evidence, sufficient, needing revision, or no evidence at all. For stage 3, the instructor would plan learning experiences. In stage 3, you're ensuring that everything is in alignment, that the assessments done in stage 2 are actually evaluating the big picture items described and determined in stage 1. So in stage 3, we are creating a where to learning plan, and where to is an acronym that stands for where the unit is going and what is expected. The H stands for hook and hold their interest, so the instructor needs to design elements of the lesson plan that would spark student interest. The E stands for equip students, help them experience the key ideas and explore the issues. The R stands for provide opportunities to rethink and revise their understanding and their work. And the E stands for evaluate, which allows students to get formative feedback to improve their work. The last part of that where to acronym is T and O, which stands for tailored, meaning that the content should be tailored to different student needs and abilities of learners. The O stands for organized with technology. So for the specifics of this course, we are making sure that there is the inclusion of technology to promote creativity, higher order thinking, and mental habits of mind. For further reading and resources on the UbD techniques, have a look at things like the Understanding by Design Professional Development Workbook by Jay McTighe and Grant Wiggins, their book Understanding by Design, the Understanding by Design Guide to Creating High-Quality Units, Understanding by Design Guide to Advanced Concepts in Creating and Reviewing Units, and Tomlinson's Differential Instruction Teacher's Guide, Getting to the Core of Teaching and Learning.